There is a peer-to-peer vulnerability that is affecting about 2 million IoT devices today.
Hey, Bindu, sounds like you have a large story on an iLnkP2P vulnerability for us.
Yes, Tom. So when I was looking up, sort of the threat landscape as of this week, this morning what I found was how IoT devices, and we've said this in the show quite a bit, you have to think of them as part of your overall asset inventory, your even at home, not just for enterprises, right? Like if we take account of all the IoT devices each of us consume at home with our, baby monitors versus, your smart, Ring devices in the front door, cameras that we have.
Our homes today have so many more networking devices on them than you could have even imagined. Like each one of us is a little system administrator in our own house.
All of these devices have the capability to be able to communicate, so using the P2P communications protocol. And we talk about this vulnerability was identified where they're calling it the iLnkP2P. This is a firmware vulnerability. And what is interesting about this is if you already have the device, and there are two aspects of the vulnerability that have been cataloged in the CVE. One is the enumeration, the next is the authentication, lack of authentication. So you can not only find a list of these devices with a certain UID, which is embedded in the device, so you cannot really afford to change it. And the next step is, even today there's no software patch available for you to fix this. And then if you have these devices, then you're prone to these vulnerabilities of somebody using that device to be able to launch other attacks, as well as intercept traffic between, let's say, a camera feed that is communicating with a server. Somebody's going to be watching you, right? The volume of IoT devices that are impacted by this vulnerability is 2 million devices across the globe. They've done a proof of concept where they're showing you, US luckily is only at about 7% out of the 2 million, but we are, it's largely predominantly in China, and we're seeing that, these devices, we say this all the time when we talk about security, right? That do not ignore these devices that you don't envision to be a critical asset, but for somebody that is looking to as an entry point to get into your network, they would look to exploit some vulnerability like this. And most of us don't swap these devices. We use default credentials. There is really no authentication to these. And the fact that we don't keep up with these devices. When was the last time we actually thought of, checking and making sure our cameras are updated, right? So we don't do that.
Yeah.
So we want to, highlight this because at this point, other than blocking the UDP traffic, and Stan, I wanted to throw this to you in terms of what you think could be a immediate fix. Of course, I can't go and replace the device, and I'm not ready to give it up yet.
There was one thing that I was reading in the comments here that really spoke to me, which I thought was a great idea. A lot of people set these up on their Wi-Fi home networks, and these devices are probably plugged in right into their same Wi-Fi that they use for their iPad or their laptop. And one of the readers commented that, hey, you should be doing this on your guest Wi-Fi network. Because a lot of routers today have a separate, almost like it's a separate IP address space on your home network. So if some of these devices do get compromised, at least they're segmented off, and they can't get into your other private data.
If it is on your network infrastructure at an organization, you want to have the IT network and the OT network clearly segmented and also monitors. It's important, I think, for us as a community to come together and say, hey, security by default, by design is necessary. We cannot think about bolting everything on. So the reason, some of the stories that we specifically bring, I think, to ThreatTraq and talk about this is not just from the aspect of, hey, we can reverse engineer a malware, hey, we are telling you about, some sort of threat out there that is, instilling fear in you, right? It's about, I think, taking it to that next step and saying, hey, this is going to be part of most of our homes, most of our organizations, and there is something we can do about it, right, to be able to limit the impact.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Bindu. I feel like there needs to be some sort of standard in terms of IoT device security, because, you go to the store and, even I was there doing this recently looking for baby monitors, and the selection options are vast, and you don't quite know what kind of comes with that piece of software or that hardware or anything like that. And IoT security isn't very clear to the end user. So it's a scary trend. But I do feel like because of the response from vendors like this, this scenario is going to play out for years to come because these devices are going to continue to be abused, especially without any sort of fix. This is something that's going to linger around in the internet for quite a while.
So don't think that these devices don't need to be monitored. These are equally important assets to your home or your organization.